On this day in 1976, a group of young military officers brutally murdered Nigeria's head of state, General Murtala Muhammad, on his way to the office in a failed attempt to take over government at national level. Just before 8:30 a.m. on February 13, 1976, the following curious announcement was heard on Radio Nigeria Lagos.
Good morning, fellow Nigerians. This is Lieutenant Column B.S. Dimka of the Nigerian Army calling. I bring you good tidings. Murtala Muhammad's deficiency has been detected. His government is now overthrown by the young revolutionaries. All the 19 military governors have no powers over the states they now govern. The state's affairs will be run by military brigade commanders until further notice. All commissioners are sacked except for the armed forces and the police commissioners, who will be redeployed. All senior military officers should remain calm in their respective spots. No divisional commanders will issue orders or instructions until further notice. Any attempt to foil these plans from any quarters will be met with death. You are warned, it is all over the 19 states. Any acts of looting or raids will be death. Everyone should be calm. Please stay by your radio for further announcements. All borders, air, and seaports are closed until further notice. Curfew is imposed from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thank you. We are all together.
Just prior to this broadcast, then Head of State, General Murtala Ramat Muhammad, along with his ADC Lieutenant Akintunde Akinsehinwa, orderly and driver, had been assassinated on his way to work in a thin-skinned black Mercedes-Benz car without escorts. The unprotected car had slowed down at the junction in front of the Federal Secretariat in Ikoyi, Lagos, when a hit team which allegedly included Lieutenant William Seri and others casually strolled up and riddled it with bullets. Following confirmation of Muhammad's death, Lieutenant Colonel Buka Suka Dimka of the Army Physical Training Corps, who, along with some others, had been up for most of the night drinking champagne, then made a quick trip to the British High Commission at about 8 a.m., where he demanded to be put in touch with General Yakubu Gowon in Britain. He allegedly left a message through Sir Martin Lekain saying General Gowon should proceed to Togo and await further instructions. Then he returned, initially accompanied by 6 others, to Ikoyi to seize the Radio Nigeria broadcast station. The martial music played was allegedly specially selected by a civilian worker, Mr. Abdul Karim Zakari, who had been alerted beforehand to do so. Other hit teams simultaneously went after other key functionaries of the regime's Trioka, namely the Chief of Staff, Supreme Headquarters, Lieutenant General Olusegun Obasanjo, and the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Theophilus Yakubu Danjuma. The military governors of Kwara and Oyo states, Colonels Ibrahim Taiwo and David Jemibiwon, respectively, were also targeted. Colonel Taiwo, who had been the national ringleader of the July 1975 coup that brought General Mohammed to power, was abducted and killed by a team led by Major K.K. Gagara in Ilorin. Jemibiwon, whose name had been added to the list of targets by Lieutenant Cole T.K. Adamu, narrowly escaped. In response to a pro-coup broadcast and other activities from Benin City by the brigade commander Colonel Isa Buka, counter-broadcasts dissociating other army units from the coup were made, first from Calabar by the brigade commander Colonel Maman Vatsa, and then from Kaduna on behalf of the GOC Brigadier Alani Akinrinade. As efforts were being made within the military to crush the revolt, university students in Lagos and Ibadan, among others, took to the streets to protest the coup. Later, when it became known that Colonel Dimka had visited the British High Commission on the day of the coup, some students attacked British and American embassies in Lagos. The coup attempt eventually failed 7 hours later, crushed by forces rallied and directed from a temporary base at Bonny Camp by Lieutenant General Danjuma, Chief of Army Staff, whose designated assassin, reportedly Lieutenant Lawrence Garba, had chosen at the last moment to spare him at the Marina Jetty, allegedly in part to avoid collateral casualties. When Danjuma got to the office and heard the radio broadcast, he held a brief war council with Colonels Domkat Bali and Ibrahim Babangida, then moved to Bonny Camp to coordinate the resistance. Colonel Babangida was sent on a motorcycle to Ikeja cantonment to get armored vehicles. Supported by these vehicles, he proceeded to Radio Nigeria, where he had a conversation with his close friend Colonel Dimka. Colonel Dimka's initial reaction to Babangida's arrival was to ask him if he came to play Chukuma and Nwawo with him, drawing a historical parallel with the negotiations between Colonel Conrad Nwawo on behalf of General Aguiyi Ironsi and Major Patrick Kaduna Nzeogwu in Kaduna in January of 1966. However, Colonel Dimka got concerned with the presence of armored vehicles in the background and asked them to be withdrawn. But it turns out that Colonel Babangida's orders had not been to negotiate a surrender or other outcome, but to stop the broadcast by any means necessary, including destruction by shelling. When he made contact with Bonikamp to report his activities at the radio station, this order was reiterated to him by General Danjuma, incredulous that a conversation with Colonel Dimka had even occurred and that the radio station was still playing Colonel Dimka's broadcast. A brief but fierce firefight, reportedly led by Major Chris Ugokwe, subsequently dislodged the coup plotters from the station. When shooting started, Colonel Dimka was said to have simply walked away, past all the soldiers surrounding the building, as well as driving through numerous checkpoints on his way, first to Jos and then eventually to Abakaliki, where he was captured by police in the company of a woman. At that time, public incredulity at his escape from Radio Nigeria led to speculations that he was assisted. President Olusegun Obasanjo has written in some of his memoirs that he was late in leaving